Okay, good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to pretend to be an expert from the World Health Organization reporting back to the headquarters on the coronavirus situation in the UK. So it's pretty general, and I'm going to start now. Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom, distinguished experts, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure for me to be able to join you this evening via video link in order to give you this briefing on the situation regarding COVID-19 in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. I am Dr. Smith, and I have been in the United Kingdom now for over 2 weeks collecting information, meeting with government officials and visiting healthcare facilities in a fact-finding mission on behalf of the World Health Organization. Before I proceed to brief you on the current situation facing this member state, I would like to give you some background information for context. The United Kingdom saw its significant rise in cases a few weeks later than the rest of Europe, which meant that the British government was reluctant to impose the draconian lockdown measures that neighbouring countries were implementing to start with. Its concern to keep the economy running seemed to take priority over taking early measures to slow the outbreak. The government, claiming to be drawing on advice from its senior scientific advisors, initially suggested that it would be counterproductive to impose quarantines at the beginning because people would, and I quote, get bored, and after too long would just stop complying. This, according to the government, would be just as the virus was approaching its peak, spelling disaster for the British Health Service. Further, it was put forward that the economic cost of imposing a lockdown too early would be extremely high in return for very little gain in the fight against the virus. Nevertheless, little evidence was presented as to how they reached these conclusions, and I now fear that the British government's reluctance to take action sooner could have resulted in significantly more cases, and therefore deaths, than there could have been otherwise. Indeed, upon my arrival in London to start my visit on the weekend of the 14th of March, as other European capitals fell silent, I witnessed London full of revellers going out drinking, eating out, and partying, just like any other busy weekend. On that weekend, the country already had over 1,400 cases, with the majority in the capital. Now, given that each infected person who is not isolated passes the virus on to many other people, a significant amount are very likely to have been infected over that weekend. While other European countries imposed lockdowns inspired by those that had already seen results in China and some other Asian countries, the United Kingdom adopted its own distinct approach, whereby the majority of the population, who are young and healthy, would be allowed to carry on as normal and catch the virus, achieving what they call herd immunity. Meanwhile, those most vulnerable to the virus would have been isolated for a period of 12 weeks or more. This idea was later thrown overboard by a study carried out by Imperial College London, which suggested that letting the virus spread uncontrolled might mean as many as 250,000 deaths, primarily among the elderly, who it would be impossible to protect completely, of course. After this study was published from Imperial College London, more serious social distancing measures were announced, whereby people were strongly urged to work from home where possible and to avoid all contact with others. These measures were advisory and not compulsory, unlike in many other countries, and were therefore widely ignored. In fact, over the next weekend of March 21st to 22nd, images on the BBC News showed thousands flocking to beauty spots around the country, to the seaside and to London parks to enjoy the first properly warm spring weekend of the year. Efforts to remain 2 meters apart, as the Prime Minister urged, were notable mainly for their absence. Additionally, many people with second homes fled the cities to the countryside to make the most of being able to work remotely. This brings me now to address the current situation as it stands on the ground in the United Kingdom. Last Sunday night, on the 22nd of March, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, prompted by the images of the public mixing over the weekend, announced a compulsory lockdown, with the police having the power to enforce it through fines. We are nevertheless very concerned about the fact that what precisely people are permitted to do is not clearly defined in the same way as in other WHO member states, meaning that it is actually extremely difficult to enforce. For example, people are allowed outside to exercise once a day, but for how long? And are they allowed to drive to a beauty spot in the countryside or to the beach to do this exercise? These things have not been specified in the new regulations, leading to very little enforcement. During my break from writing this report yesterday afternoon, I cycled to a nearby beach about 5 miles away, and there were cars parked all along the access roads because the actual car park has been closed, and there were people all over the beach. There was actually a police car patrolling, ready to prevent people from congregating in groups, I think, but unable to prevent people from driving to the beach because, of course, this has not been officially banned. On the whole, though, citizens do seem to be taking the new measures seriously. I have observed most people respecting social distancing rules. In fact, a village here near where I'm staying in West Wales has declared itself closed to all non-residents. The United Kingdom is, in many ways, extremely well equipped to deal with a pandemic, with its universal, free at the point of use healthcare system open to every person in the country. It is centrally controlled and fully publicly funded, meaning that it is able to mobilize resources quickly and distribute them to the regions that need them most. Further, doctors and nurses can be moved from place to place where needed. Huge efforts have been made over recent weeks to recruit new staff for the National Health Service, the NHS, such as cleaners, porters, caterers, etc. And thousands of retired doctors and nurses have now returned to work to help with the expected surge in patients. As we speak, huge field hospitals are being built with the support of the British Army in stadiums and in conference centres in large cities in anticipation of a surge in cases. We are, however, concerned about the stress that the NHS has been put under over the last decade due to austerity, which has led to a decline in the amount of intensive care beds available. Indeed, it is estimated that the UK has half the amount of intensive care beds as Italy, which is so far the worst affected country in Europe. This means that should the amount of cases in the United Kingdom reach Italian levels, the death rate could be much higher. This situation is complicated further by the shortage of ventilators. This is vital equipment for persons suffering from acute respiratory problems due to the virus, and we are extremely concerned about the United Kingdom's recent refusal to participate in a European Union scheme to buy ventilators en masse using the EU's collective purchasing power. Given that there is already a significant shortage of ventilators available to the NHS, the British government should definitely not be turning down any opportunity to obtain more, especially not in the name of partisan politics. As we approach the peak of the virus in the United Kingdom, expected in a few weeks' time, we will continue to monitor the situation very closely and report back to you. Thank you for your attention.